Hi, this is Cheryl McQueen, designer with Bello's Designs. Today I'll be showing you how to use the Sweet Poppy Snowflake Bauble Stencil and the Buddy die to make a card. If you don't have a die cutter, this tutorial will still show you how to use the Bauble Stencil by itself. Here's an example using the die buddy and one without. So this one you can see I have cut out with the die buddy, and then this one is just plain. So here are the supplies that we'll be using today. I will be using the multifarious Smooth and Supreme 7 by 7 inch by Lavinia, the white cardstock, or you can use a white cardstock that is at least 117 pounds. You will need two pieces. The first one will need to be cut to 4.5 by 6.5 inches, and the other piece will need to be cut to 4 3/4 inches by 6 3/4 inches. We will also use a color cardstock. This one is cut 10 by 7 and then folded in half. I will be using for my stamps the Lavinia Christmas Tree Group, which is LAV021, and I will be using the Reindeer, the small one, LAV487. We will use the Sweet Poppy Christmas Snowflake Flourish Bauble, which is this stencil right here. And then we'll also be using the optional die cut, if you would like to use that if you have a die cutter. This one is the Christmas Snowflake Flourish Bauble Buddy die. It's SPD-129. We'll also use the Lavinia Floral stencil. This one is ST015. We'll be using that one for our top card. And then we will be using only just a couple of colors of ink. Today we're going to use the Distress Villainous Potion and the Wilted Violet. For the stamping ink, I am going to be using the VersaFine Claire Nocturne. We'll also use a 1-inch circle mask. This one I've actually put a little piece of painter's tape on the back of it so that it will stick when I'm trying to do my aura around the moon. We'll also be using a torn piece of paper for a moon, for some of the clouds floating across the moon here. I don't know if you can see it very well in this particular picture with the angle, but we'll be using that. And then finally we will be using a large circle cut out that we will place over the top when we're ready to do our stamping. I am using blending brushes today. I've just got my regular blending brushes, and then this is one of my new acquisitions. It's a very narrow brush. It's a Nellie's Choice, and I am really enjoying using this one for very small and tight places. I'll also be using a mini Dauber. I'll be using that for doing the outer edges and for the moon. I have Sweet Poppy low tack tape. For putting our card together, we can either use a runner's tape or the Ultra Bond adhesive. If you choose to do the cut out and then you want to have your card, the top layer, lifted up, I use just some little dimensionals. And I'll show you how that I do that. Then for just a little bit of touch-ups and fine points, I have the Sakura Jelly Roll Pen and the Sakura White Pen. I think this one is the white one here, and here is the glitter. And then I have a fine tip black pen that I will use. I'm also going to be using my Tim Holtz stamping platform. that I have the sticky grid down so that I don't have to use any magnets. So now we're ready to go ahead and begin working on our card. So to begin with on this project, if you have the cutting machine and the die, we're going to go ahead and do our top layer first. So what we're going to do is we are going to take our 4.5 by 6.5 inch piece, and we're just going to use our Flora Stencil by Lavinia. I usually like to go ahead and tape my piece down to my work surface just so that it doesn't wiggle around on me so much. So I'm going to tape that down, and then I'm going to lay my stencil on top. I also, the same way, I like to go ahead and put just a little bit of tape on so that my stencil does not move around. So I'll just put a few pieces there. So I'm going to start out with my wilted violet. And what I want to do is just put this on very, very light. I don't want a real heavy hand on it. So I'm going to just take my blending brush and just gently do a little bit of the ink on over the stencil. Alright, so you can see that I have done it fairly light because I don't want that to be real dark. And so there is our top part of our card just lightly stenciled. Now I always like to have just a little bit of a framing around. I like it to look a little like it's got something to help pull your eye into the center. As you can see with this one, how I have got a little bit darker edge around it. And to do that, all I do is I just take a little dauber, and then I'm going to go ahead and take the Villainous Potion, and just gently go in circles around the edges to make a little bit of a frame. I just like the look of it. You don't have to do that if you don't want to, but I like it because it kind of, to me, gives a little bit of a punch. Alright, so now that we have got that done, we will go ahead and cut out the center piece. So this is going to, I like to use a piece of magnet. I don't think it's something you have to do, but it's very helpful. It helps to keep your stencil from wiggling around. So what I'm going to do is, let me find get our little cutting thing out. I happen to have a Big Shot, so let me grab the Big Shot real quick. And so basically what I'm going to do, if you have one of these, you know how this works. We have a bottom layer, then we have our stencil, our cutter, which, let's see, I think I put that underneath here. I'm going to turn this upside down so that the cutting edges are where they need to be. And one of the tips that I was told to help keep your cutter from the cutting die from wiggling is just use a little piece of like Post-it note paper basically, so that it sticks and just holds it in place, so that when you place your top piece of plastic on it, it's not going to wiggle. And then you just push it in and cut out the die. And so what we have when we're done is this frame, and then we actually have this nice little cutout piece. You can set that aside to use later. This is what I actually did. I stenciled on top of the piece that I had with my stencil, and so I will now be able to use this on another card in the future. So I will set these aside, and then we will be ready to begin to do our stenciling. So what I will do is I will take my magnetic sheet, and then I will take my Sweet Poppy stencil, and I'm going to go ahead and tape down with my low tack tape onto my magnetic sheet so that my top layer piece does not wiggle around while I'm doing the stenciling. Alright, now what I want to do, let's get my little bit larger piece. This is the 6 3/4 by 4 3/4 piece. I'm actually going to go ahead and tape it down first. And then we will center that. I want an 1/8 of an inch, so it looks like it's kind of a frame, and then tape it down. I'm going to tape down the top at first right now, because what I want to do is figure out exactly where I'm going to want this to go. So I'm going to line it up with my cutout. And then I'm going to take some more tape and make sure that you don't get over any of the cutout places on your stencil. And I'm just going to tape this down, and by doing this, taping it, it not only helps keep it from wiggling, but it will also protect the outer edge that you don't want to get any ink on when you're doing your stenciling. Alright, go ahead and put just a little piece on that top part that I missed. And now we are ready to begin doing our stenciling. For the stenciling, I'm going to use the Villainous Potion. This is the little bit darker shade. So I take my blending brush, and what I want to do is I would like for it to be darker where the ribbon is in the top of the bottle. So when I do my stenciling here, I'm going to be using a lot of ink and pressing down to make sure that I get a darker shade there. And this is where my little brush comes in. I can use it on these little portions right here, like the ribbon and the bobble, to make them darker without getting too much darkness around on the other parts that I'm going to want it to be just a little bit lighter. So that thinner brush just allows you to be a little bit more precise. Alright, and then I'm also going to do a very dark around where the snowflakes are. Then, starting with just what's left on the brush, I'm going to lighten my touch and just start doing a little bit lighter shade on my rest of the parts of the bauble. So very light where the pine needles are. Very light where the ribbon is. And I may have gotten just a little bit off there on that, but I'm not going to worry too much about it. And then I may go just slightly darker, but not as dark as the top part. So you can just kind of play around with it to see how you want it to look, how dark you want it to be. But like I said, I like to keep it just a little bit lighter. Than what I did at the very top. And then I also like to leave a little bit more white in the very center. This actually helps give it a little bit more of the illusion that it's round. Now if you decide that you wanted a few little darker places in your ribbons, you can go back with your little brush. Just pick out some little sections and darken those up. Just gives it a little bit more depth. Okay, so now that we've got this part done, we are ready to take our stencil off. And there we have, there's the bottom card with just the stencil on it. And then you have the frame that we made that can go over the top of it. Now if you don't have the cutter, then just do the steps that we did with putting our stencil down onto our piece of card. With that, you obviously don't have to worry about the frame. You'll just lay it on your card and center it, and then do the same process of the blending with your brush. And before we move on, I just do want to do a little bit of caution when you are cleaning off your stencil, the metal stencil. Be very careful. It has sharp edges. I usually just run mine under water and let the ink come off that way, and then using a soft cloth like an old t-shirt, I'll dry it, and then that way you don't have to worry about getting cut with the edges that are very sharp. So now we are ready to go ahead and begin our stamping part. So I'm going to grab my stamping platform. And place my card with the stenciled bauble on there. And we are ready to go. So what I want to do first is I want to go ahead and do the moon. So I'm going to scoot this up just a little bit and place my moon mask on my bauble there. And then I like to use a very tiny little dauber. I feel like I've just got a little bit more control when I do that. And I'm basically just going to flick from the center out on my circle mask. That helps to just create like a little aura around the moon. And then we can remove our little circle mask to get our moon. I also like to add what looks like clouds across the moon in the sky. So I just have a little piece of paper, scrap paper. You can see this was one from when I did a previous video that has my notes on it. And then I just like to lay it down. Again, taking my small dauber and just flick up across the edge. And what this does is just kind of gives you a little look of some clouds floating across the sky and the moon. And then maybe one more. Little row of clouds. All right. So now I will go to my Christmas tree group. Now what I want to do is I don't want this to go outside my little bauble shape. So what I have done is I have gotten a piece of paper and cut a circle out that will fit over my bauble. And this is maybe like a 1/16 of an inch less than a 3.5 inch circle. For some reason the bauble is just slightly smaller than 3.5 inches. So I will lay that down, and then just to make sure that it doesn't wiggle, I'm just going to put just a little piece of tape down across it. And then place my trees. I actually want to do it just a little bit up. I don't want it to be all the way down at the bottom. All right. Then I will take my Fine Clair Nocturne. We will ink up our stamp. Close that up and then apply some even pressure. Make sure that all surfaces of the stamp actually meet your paper. There we go. All right. And now at this point we can go ahead and remove our mask, and you see that our trees did not go outside of the area. So what I think I'll go ahead and do, and I'm going to go ahead and do my reindeer, and I do want him to go outside. So we will position him where we want him. And I will get the lid off there. Ink up the reindeer. His body's pretty solid, so sometimes I do have to stamp him twice. We'll see if we have to do that this time or not. Oh, he actually turned out pretty good that time. Might do just a tiny little bit more. Right there, where his chest is a little bit on the light side. But we just re-ink the stamp up and get a good solid image. That's why I love using the stamping platform. So now I will remove the card from my stamping platform. And this is where I like to do, excuse me, sorry, just a little bit of touch-up work or touch work, sparkle or whatever. First thing I like to do is I like for my trees and my reindeer to be grounded. So I just take a fine black pen and just draw in a little bit of ground and grass. And then I do the same thing on the trees. That just kind of gives that a feeling of that it's actually touching the ground instead of floating in the air. You don't have to do that, but I like to. Alright, I don't know if you can see that very well. Let's see if I can get that up there and keep it in focus. But anyway, you can see where I have drawn in the grass. I also like to, since this is going to be a holiday card, I'm going to go ahead and put just a little bit with the white Sakura pen. I'm going to put some snow on the branches. And that can just be random little strokes. I'm going to make sure that my pen is flowing here. It looks like it is. And like I said, just some little dashes just to put on the leaves, on the branches, to make it look like there's snow resting on them. You don't have to worry about being super precise on it. Just kind of scribble some white in there. And then if you'd like to, put a little bit down on the ground under the trees. Alright, and then for the final thing, I like to add just a little bit of sparkle to it. So taking my glitter pen, I'm actually just going to kind of color in the little top of the bauble with the glitter pen. And it's hard, I know, when we're videoing for you to be able to see the glitter, but I'll try and pick it up here in just a moment and see if we can catch that glitter look. So I'm going to do it on that. I'll go ahead and fill in some glitter on the berries. And then finally we'll just put some on the branches. The little pine needles make them stand out and look like they've got maybe ice crystals on them. Again, you don't have to be super precise. You're just basically wanting to get a little bit of the glitter in there. Alright, let's see if we can kind of get the glitter to show up just a little bit on the video here. Okay, so now we are to the point where we can go ahead and mount this to our base card. So I will just line this up. I can either use my Ultra Bond adhesive or my running tape. It's a little bit faster to use the running tape when I'm trying to demonstrate on the video, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. And mount that to my card there. I'll tell you what I am going to do is grab a piece of paper here so I can see it just a little bit better with the black contrast there to make sure I get it lined up where I want it to be. So obviously if you don't have a cutter, you can be done at this point in time. On this particular one that I did without the cutter, I actually did the stenciling on the smaller piece of cardstock and then made a frame out of color and then had my card base. With this one, we have our frame, which is a little bit smaller than the white piece. Now, as you can see, my reindeer is covered up. So I'm going to trim out a little bit of the frame here so that I can be sure to see my reindeer that I've stamped. So there's some of on his feet, and then I'm going to cut a little bit here. Alright, and I'll cut out just a little bit more. Once we get that where we want that, then we are ready to work on getting it mounted on our frame. So I will cut just a little bit more here, and we will mount our frame. Now you can do this two ways. You can use the dimensionals like I have used, or you can just glue this down straight down on top. So let's go ahead and see about using our dimensionals. So to put our dimensionals on, we'll just take our frame piece and turn it over and place them in various places around to make sure that we get it so that it stands up fairly evenly. Now there are a few little places here that you might see, like these tiny little pieces, that if you don't want those on there, you can go ahead and just snip them off as well. I think I'll just take that one off. And if you like, my little dimensionals here have a little bit of an edging, so I may just snip a little piece of that off and place it in some of the narrower places. And I may do one just right there. Go ahead and trim a little piece off. Alright. What I would recommend doing when you're doing that, since you want your spaces, your frame to show and be fairly even, is only remove the backing portion from the top part. I think I'm going to go ahead and trim this little piece off as well. There we go. And then line it up to make sure that you're getting in to a good place where you want it before you finish up pulling off the little papers. Alright, I think that's going to get it lined up pretty well, and then I can go ahead and continue on around the edge. There we go. And now our card is finished. You've got your little bit of dimension there where it pops up. And as I said before, if you don't want to or don't have the equipment for doing the pop-out frame, then you can do one without it. There, our project is completed. Thank you so much for watching my video tutorial today. I hope you have fun using the Bauble Stencil and the Die Buddy. Remember to check out the bellosdesigns.com website for more tutorials on the design team page. Have a great day.